Dr. Austin Lakes, welcome to Miami and welcome to Biohack-it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to sit down with you since we chatted in London.
Yep.
You brought up something when we had dinner together about how people are constantly chasing symptoms.
Well, yeah, it's easy to do when you have a lot of symptoms going on and a lot of unknown reasons as to why they're happening. I think you can start chasing your tail pretty quickly. And it takes a lot of work to figure out what's going on. It's kind of like being an investigative analyst. Like, you have to really dive deep, and oftentimes we don't have the time or the resources to do that.
And when it means, like, in my opinion, sometimes people, do you think they just kind of come up with symptoms as well because something else is going on, they're projecting other areas of their life? Is it almost like avoiding things that are unhealed?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, much like when you get sick, I think you start having, you feel malaise, you feel fatigued, you have runny nose, like you just overall don't feel very well. And it starts creating this dysfunction within your system to where it's easy to become like a hypochondriac about what's going on, because when you're aware of what your body's trying to tell you, you start trying to figure it out on your own. And so every little thing becomes a potential problem, when the reality is sometimes it's just part of living in this world, and other times there really is an actual issue.
For anybody listening, why do you think conventional medicine fails so many people every single year?
Well, it's kind of like what I was saying before. Like, it takes a lot of effort and time to figure these things out. And also, we have a system that profits off the sick. Whenever you're rewarding people for not helping people to get better to their full capability, you're going to create a system that is very toxic. And I think we're seeing the full effect of that now with our, the fact that we spend the most amount of money in the world on healthcare, and we have one of the sickest developed nations in the world. There's your evidence.
I always look at other countries that are, kind of spend on healthcare and stuff, and I was like, why are they doing better than us? Like, do you think it's just down to the fact that pharmaceutical industry is so intertwined in our government and it's become so corrupt? Or do you think it's across the board, from agriculture to how we're training people in medical schools and turning out doctors these days? Like, where do you see the largest piece of the problem?
I think the largest piece is going to stem from our beliefs as a culture, that we can put all our trust or all our eggs in the basket of conventional medicine, thinking that they can solve all our problems, because that's been the indoctrination since the early 1900s, is that your doctor knows everything health related, and they don't. They're trained in specific areas of health for sure and are really good at it, but they are not the end all be all when it comes to health. And so our culture, especially our grandparents and our parents, they think there's a pill for every ill, and that's all you really have to do. You don't have to do any actual work. But then that stems into agriculture, it stems into our workforce, it stems into what happens in the home, and it creates a very vicious cycle.
When we were there for the inauguration together, and we were so excited to bring in Bobby Kennedy, and I think the HHS has done some amazing work. However, do you think they're as far along currently to date as we had maybe hoped or expected?
I think probably not as far as we would hoped. I think it's realistically, though, it's probably as far as we could have gotten to this point. There's a lot of undoing that we have to do to kind of get at real progress, and also understand that there's a lot of temptations or active threats going against Bobby Kennedy and the whole organization, because there's a lot of money to be made. And I think the advancements with technology and AI is really something that we probably don't fully understand the full consequences of that yet, but it's coming under the guise of like, well, this is better for the health of the people, when the reality is it probably may lead to more control.
I saw this little clip, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and it was President Trump, Bobby Kennedy was obviously in it, Dr. Oz, and it was perhaps the CEO of Pfizer, but definitely somebody from Pfizer. And they were talking about like their funding and what they're going to do with it, and I just stood back and I just shook my head. I was like, this is not about giving you guys more funding. This is about looking deeper into what a lot of the products that they have created. Not a single product that has come out of Pfizer has led to a cure ever.
Right.
And so for me, that was a little like disappointing almost, because I was like, listen, like we all know what's going on here, but that's where I say that the pharmaceutical companies have such a power over our government because of the amount of funding that they have brought in, that I don't think any government, these guys have definitely done a much better job, are completely free of that.
Well, again, I think if what they were doing was leading to healthier nations and populations, then it's great, But if it's just about, hey, instead of getting at the root cause of things, now we're just going to create a new product with a different angle that's going to help you, treat the symptom and not actually fix the problem. It's like, well, we're just like, it's a revolving door of what we've already been exposed to. So I'm hoping that we actually have a true desire to heal people. But when you look at people like the World Economic Forum, where they have a stated depopulation agenda, I don't believe that that's really what we're trying to do.
Yeah. If you were like actively part of HHS and you could work on certain policies and stuff, what are 3 policies or things that you would like to get funding for, and what policies would you have liked to put into place?
Yeah, it'd be policies for having like micro agriculture, like more local, to where people can actually have food being exchanged in a very local space, so that food doesn't have to expire and be, exposed to the things that it is and have to have the preservatives and all that stuff in it. The other one would be supporting the nuclear family, so that we can have women, if they want to work, like that's fantastic, but allowing for more flexibility so they can be at home with their new babies or supporting their families, and having roles for husbands to take on that where they can make more money to buy good, healthy food. Like these are all very maybe not so practical, but they also all are very practical at the same time. It's like we want to have a nuclear family, we want to have good, healthy food, and we don't want to treat our homes like hotels. I think if we can avoid that, we would start seeing a lot more health in our nation.
It's funny you talk about how women should have more choice. I think feminism was terrible. The first wave of feminism, where we were able to vote and have our own bank account stuff, amazing.
Yeah, obviously.
Okay?
Yeah.
But the second wave of feminism that came in, I think, is completely being toxic to the family system, because it has taken away traditional gender roles, which made us women stay in our feminine and men in their masculine. And when I look at America, because I'm obviously Pakistani, I spend a lot of time in the Middle East as well. When I look at America and what's happened to the men in this country when it comes to being providers and protectors, which at the end of the day is the 2 main purposes of being a man.
Right.
If you're not in alignment over there, then what are you doing?
Right.
But so many stories, I hear them all day, that men in this country are so disconnected from understanding that that is your role and function, to provide safety and security to your partner and to provide financially to your partner.
Right. Well, I think, again, culturally speaking, we've created this fear, at least what I've experienced as a white male. It's like, I feel bad for being a white male who wants to protect my wife. Like,
why?
Because that's what we've been told since I was a kid, that this is a toxic masculinity thing. But the reality is, and what I realized now that I have 4 kids and been married for 12 years, being a male is hard, and if anything, it's it's a lot of responsibility, right? It's not that I get to abuse my leadership. It's, if anything, if I'm going to be a good leader, it means that I have to die to myself. I have to sacrifice. I have to give up what I want to do for the benefit of my kids and my wife. And so I think there's a picture of true masculinity from a biblical perspective that doesn't align with what our culture says masculinity is. So that's part of the problem.
I wouldn't even look at it like that, and I'll pose this to you and you tell me what you think. I think it's not even giving up what we want, but it's repositioning the narrative, because a woman also adds so much structure, and a woman's energy is naturally a manifestation, right?
Sure.
So she creates that structure at home and brings in that creativity and tells a man, I'm going to give you peace in the house so that you can go out into the world and create, and you can go out into the world and bring home abundance for us, because I'm providing you that safety as well.
Yeah.
So it's almost like an energetic exchange in some ways, and women are, I think choosing the right partner is very, very important.
Right.
But I think that, again, needs to be shifted as narrative, is instead of making men feel like they're sacrificing, it's that together planning, so the man still feels supported as well, but understands the woman's also taking on a lot of resposibility.
Yeah, I think
especially in this country where childcare is next to impossible for a lot of people,
very,
right?
Very expensive. No, I think that's such a I think about my wife, and I most of my business success is, almost all of it has been because of her. She stays home with our kids by design, she wants to. That was what we discussed before we even had kids. When she worked at different points early in our marriage before we had kids, and she actually provided most of the financial income when I was in school because she had to.
Of course,
But when we were first married, I told her, I was like, look, we want to have kids. You want to stay at home, even though you could go out and do anything that you wanted to. And so we took a financial hit up front, for me to have one income. But by us doing that, she provided that peace and stability within our home, to where we would have amazing meals. We would have a peaceful environment. Our house would be very maintained. We'd have a lot of guests come over. We would host a lot of people. And, since we've had kids, it's just kind of continued. So I 100% agree with you. That is an energetic exchange that if it wasn't for her or wasn't for me working together, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, and I don't think you can almost put a price tag on that sort of a beautiful harmony between the two, right? And I think when we look across the world in any cultures, I think both people understanding their roles and understanding what they're bringing to the table improves their health, improves the community that they're part of. And I think that's where we've gone wrong in this country is we've become so disconnected from understanding our own personal identities. And that's where I think a lot of women are 30% more susceptible to autoimmune disease, but I think also women are living out of design. Women are chronically stressed.
Right.
We're pushing ourselves to do things that we're not necessarily designed to do. And we're constantly like, our cortisol levels are unwired.
Well, I've always said, when you look at things like PCOS and endometriosis and really what you're seeing is the reversal of the benefits of female hormones. You're switching from femininity to masculinity by design because you have to. That's a cortisol response. And so I think whenever I'm working with a female client, I'm always trying to portray that to them and help them to analyze areas of their life where that's not happening, where it's like, where are you adding extra cortisol or extra stress? Unnecessarily sometimes, and sometimes because you have to. There's just certain things you have to do. But more times than not, when you have this culture that's saying do more, and you start getting less and less, you have to understand the connection hormonally as to why that's happening, and that's the whole point.
If you are taking protein powder, you definitely need to hear this. The Clean Label Project tested 160 different proteins from different vendors and brands across the US. And you're going to be shocked at the discovery that they made. Nearly half of the top selling proteins in the US tested high for lead. And if you're somebody who consumes protein powders daily, this is something you have to be concerned about. And to make matters worse, most brands do not value transparency and will not reveal their test data online. And I want my community, like myself, to always make an informed choice of what they want to be exposed to and how they consume their daily protein. And that is why I love Puri. I also sat down with the founder and had a full, honest, transparent conversation with him about how they source, how they educate their consumer, and also what their products offer on the market, which sets them apart. Their Puri PW1 protein tastes absolutely exceptional, and you're not getting the gunk of heavy metals in it to start your morning with. And that is why I absolutely love Puri's PW1 whey protein, and that is how I choose to start my day every morning. Every single batch is third-party tested by the Clean Label Project, and no product is ever sold unless it passes these tests. And Puri is one of the only brands in the US that has the Clean Label product certification on their products. And that is only possible because they make all their third-party testing completely transparently available to the consumer through a QR code where you can track the exact journey of the batch of product that you're purchasing. So you guys can see for yourself exactly how clean the PW1 that you're consuming in the morning is. Every single serving gives you 21 grams of minimally processed, high quality, bioavailable protein. It comes from pasture raised cows, no GMOs, no hormones, no herbicides, no pesticides, and definitely no heavy metals. So this means I can start my day with confidence knowing I'm having something super clean to support my skeletal muscle mass. My personal favorite flavor is the berberine vanilla, no artificial flavors and no funky aftertaste. So make sure your daily protein powder is not hiding any nasty chemicals and they're not being open and transparent with you. So if you want something clean, delicious, and bioavailable with transparency, go now to get this amazing discount, PURI.com, Puri.com/biohack-it. Switch over to Puri's PW1 protein and you can thank me later. When you are working with your female clients, right, what are the 3 things you tell them to optimize their hormones before they turn to something like hormone replacement therapy, which we're going to get into?
Yeah. It's always going to be circadian rhythm, first of all.
And so what is that? Let's explain to the audience.
So circadian rhythm is basically whenever light is interacting with your pineal gland coming through your eyes, it's going to help to regulate hormones within your body. So appetite, like ghrelin, leptin, cortisol, melatonin, all those hormones are being regulated because of your circadian rhythm. And so when you're awake in the morning time, you're starting that circadian clock. And so when you eat food in the morning, that kind of breaks your fast, right? That's why we have breakfast.
Okay.
A lot of women that I work with, they are told to fast, right? And so they're skipping breakfast, but they're yet having caffeine with sugar or milk or whatever in it, breaking their fast, and that's their breakfast. And so they're starting their day off with this dysregulated circadian rhythm already. And so now all of a sudden, insulin, which is going to be regulating your sugar coming into your body, which is essentially energy, it's going to be saying like, hey, let's store this as fat because we're going to need it as for later for a rainy day, instead of utilizing it for energy uptake throughout the duration of your day. So now you're going to start having fatigue, you're start having more fat storage just because you had a bad start to your day. And so if you do that frequently, and then you have other stressors of like you're eating toxic food, like a lot of processed food or ultra processed food that's adding even more of a burden to your system, or maybe you're exposed to mold, or maybe you have parasites or heavy metals or just radiation from your phone. Now all of a sudden your cells are very toxic laden, and they're having to work on all these extra stressors, which is essentially what's happening to your body. So oxidative stress is essentially what's happening, and a lot of women are just not really able to fully see the dots that they're connecting as far as like why they feel the way they feel and why their cells are not functioning well, and then subsequently why they have, like thyroid issues or sex hormone issues or infertility issues, because all that stuff is connected back to each other.
So it's so funny you were saying that most women wake up in the morning and tend to, so I was having black coffee in the morning, and then I'd go work out, and then I'd come back and have a protein breakfast, right?
Yeah.
And then a dear friend of mine, Dr. John Kim, was like, I don't think you can do that because your hormones are so wired right now. Your cortisol is really high. So he taught me this recipe. It's called a Russian custard. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
So basically 2 egg yolks, raw, with a little bit of sea salt and honey. And he's like, the first thing you do is, besides have water with electrolytes and minerals, right after that, you're going to take this shot of this Russian custard, and then you can have your coffee.
Right.
But that is what you have to do because your body has to absorb the nutrients before the cup of coffee hits your stomach.
Yeah, because caffeine spikes cortisol, and cortisol is going to spike your need for sugar. And so you're going to have more sugar cravings. You're going to be more hungry. You're going to be more likely to have snacks in between meals. And all this is just causing this dysregulated circadian rhythm, so that when you do go throughout your day, now you're going to have a big crash in the afternoon. Or
that was happening to me.
Yeah, or then when you do eat a meal, you're going to want to overeat. And then when you do go to bed, you're going to have dysregulated sleep, and then you're going to start this whole vicious cycle. So circadian rhythm would be the first thing that I would say would be what you need to fix as a female. Second thing would be, I think, just ensuring you understand what your toxic burden is, right? And so I kind of mentioned this a little bit already, but a lot of women don't know. They don't know what they don't know, right? Just like most of us. If you don't test, if you don't know kind of what's going on, you're not going to have any idea where to start. So if you've been exposed to mold, or you have a history of mono and EBV, or you've had issues with parasites or heavy metals, like all these things I said, if you have that kind of brewing in the background, and you're taking, your supplements, you're eating the right food, and you're trying to do all these things, exercise, but you have these underlying stressors to your cells, you're going to be kind of chasing your tail for a while. And that's what I was mentioning with your symptoms before. If you don't know what you're really trying to fix, and you're just trying to fix a symptom, there's a lot of reasons you can have certain symptoms. And so it's not always just like, oh, I have a runny nose, it's this, or I have joint pain, it's this. It's like, well, it could be many things. And so you have to kind of get at the root of that. And that's where I would say to be the second thing. Comments on that?
Yeah. No, I think a lot of times we are, like you said, we're so focused on the symptom that we forget that we have to zoom back and look at the larger picture.
Right.
How are we sleeping? How are we eating? What are external stressors in our life? How are we getting enough sleep?
Right.
So when my hormones were completely out of whack this summer, I realized I wasn't getting enough REM or deep sleep at all. And when I started fixing my sleep hygiene, having a proper nighttime routine, making sure I'm in bed by 10, trying to put away my phone, turning off my phone so I'm not getting any of the EMF of radiation coming through. And I just checked my sleep score, and my sleep score after 4 months, for the first time ever, or 5 months, was like at a 98.
Wow.
And I had 2.5 hours of REM sleep, an hour and a half of deep sleep, and I was like, wow.
Big difference.
It makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
But that was getting my body the right nutrients, circadian rhythm cycling, and then from there, making sure that I'm working on my sleep hygiene.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the boring stuff, right? Like, it's the things that really...
But that's the beautiful part. It's the free stuff that
free.
people don't realize.
Yeah.
Start with the things that are free before you go buy another supplement, before you get on this. And even before, you tell me if this is right or wrong. Before you consider getting on hormone replacement therapy, I think you need to fix certain functions in your life and make sure you're creating certain healthier habits and then adding in the hormones.
Yeah, that's always been my stance, because if you just add hormones to a broken system, you're just going to feed the wrong pathway that is causing the problem. So a lot of women will get testosterone, or they'll get estrogen and progesterone, whatever. But if they're already having a dysfunctional hormonal pathway, they're just going to re-emphasize the problem, and
Correct.
So it's going to exacerbate it. And this is the same with perimenopause too. Like, a lot of women that are going through perimenopause, entering menopause, think that, well, this is like a dysfunctional thing. But the reality is, perimenopause is happening for about 10 years up until menopause occurs, right? And so a lot of, conventional doctors be like, well, once you don't have a cycle for 12 months, now you're menopausal, you're postmenopausal. It's like if you like were pregnant and the doctor's like, well, you're not pregnant until the baby's here.
Correct.
It's like, no, like you've been pregnant this whole time leading up to it.
Absolutely.
And so I think a lot of people will throw hormones at a problem when they don't realize that there are symptoms like, PMS or mood swings or, weight gain or fatigue or brain fog happening for 10 years leading up to menopause that needs to be addressed. And if you address those things, then menopause is actually, you go from fertility to stability, right? Like if you have good hormonal balance
right.
leading up to it, it can be a great experience for a female to become, transition into a different phase of life where you can be a stable force rather than like a fertile force. And I think, but it all gets back to like the foundational problems that were persisting before that.
So your wife has had 4 beautiful, gorgeous, healthy babies. Is it true that when a woman gives birth, her body almost experiences right after that like a menopause, like for a little bit?
Yeah, I mean that's why you don't have a cycle, right? There's a lack of a cycle.
And how long do you not have a cycle for? I mean,
it depends on the woman. So a lot of it depends on breastfeeding. So like if they're breastfeeding at night, for like my wife, she's still breastfeeding, and she just had her cycle, and she's like 12 months post delivery.
Okay.
And so, but she was feeding our baby like all throughout the night until a couple months ago.
So her circadian rhythm is not.
Yeah, so she's still, her body's still requiring that. So like our neighbor, for example, she, or I can't remember, maybe one of my wife's friends, she starts having her cycle like 8 weeks after
she was breastfeeding or no?
Her breastfeeding is different from, and I don't even know who this person is, but this is just my wife has told me. So either way, it varies quite a bit depending on where you're at.
I feel like the female body, and I had another guest on in London when we were together on the podcast, and this man told me, he's like, we always place this idea of like strength and courage and all on the men, but the women are really, truly resilient, more than men could ever be or dream of being. Because imagine a woman who gives birth and she does not sleep properly sometimes for years. I have friends who are like, don't want to really have a nanny, are doing everything themselves. The baby's always with them. And some of their kids are like 2.5 years old and they have not slept properly for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And they're still functioning at work. They're a great hands-on mom. They're a great wife. And I'm like, man, if you did that to a man, he would fall apart. Like a man going through 2 years of sleep regression.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be functioning.
Well, it's hard to, it's such a hard, and it gets back to what you were saying before.
Yeah.
It's like we have different skill sets and different abilities.
Absolutely.
I think men, because of our cycles are 24 hours
Correct.
on the clock, like we're very stable in that sense. And so we can handle a lot of load and we actually do better with it. I always say men are like trailers, like we pull straighter with a heavier load. And like, I think that is true. And that means that we need a lot of responsibility. We need to kind of know what direction we're going, and we need to be kind of like very aware of that. I think females, again, there's a consequence to those things. Like I don't want women to think that I can do that because I'm tougher, and then it like leads to these issues.
Yeah,
because
of course.
that's why most women use most of the financial health dollars in the world, in the United States, because they do have 80% of the autoimmune issues. They do have more issues with heart attacks. They're more likely to die after a heart attack. They're using more of these dollars because our society has not treasured them enough to protect them enough and understand that, hey, you're not getting enough sleep. Maybe we shouldn't be putting more burden on you, expecting you to work out or doing these extra things with your career. Like maybe we should take a bit of a sabbatical from that so we can protect
Absolutely.
you. And so I think it's important to kind of understand like, where we are with that stuff, because there's a bit of a cultural issue on that, like we were saying before.
And when it comes to women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, obviously every decade is so different for a woman than a man. How can these women listening to the podcast start optimizing their hormones from 20-year-olds to 30-year-olds to 40 and into their 50s?
I mean, I would do the circadian rhythm thing really well. I would figure out what kind of potential toxic burdens you've been exposed to or dealing with. I would make sure you understand what a good supplement regimen looks like for you.
Okay. And it's individualized, correct?
Yeah, I'll talk about the common ones that I feel like are most appropriate for most women and just people in general. But I think for most women, they need a good methylated B complex. I think that's such a critical
And why
one.
is that?
So about 60% of women have MTHFR. And so that's that issue with you don't basically detoxify, you don't methylate very well, and that's a genetic variant. So there's nothing you can really do about that. I have that, my wife has that. Most people probably haven't, unfortunately. And so if you have that, you need these methylated B vitamins that can be easily absorbed so that you can then make energy, detoxify, and methylation happens about 300 billion times a day. So it's like a very important process that needs to occur.
If it's such an important process, how does 60% of the population have this disruption?
I think I've researched this a little bit, but I think some of it has to do with folic acid that we're putting into our foods and fortifying cereals and things like that.
So it's become worse over the years.
It's hard to say that with confidence. According to my research and what I've read, we don't know that for sure, but there definitely seems to be some worsening of that, or at least more awareness to it. But either way, it's a big problem. And so you can very easily mitigate that by taking a methylated B complex. And some people don't do well with that, depending if they have like CompT or something like that. But most of the time, it's a good option. And so you can get methylfolate into your system. The problem is a lot of women that are pregnant will take folic acid because that's what they're told in their prenatals. And folic acid, if you have MTHFR, is like a toxin. It's very, very toxic for your system. So they're
not even checking these women.
No, they don't check them. So they're told to take folic acid to prevent like cerebral palsy and all these different kind of things. And spina bifida, I think is maybe what it is. But we're taking it, and then afterwards they're having a lot of postpartum depression. And according to my research, it's because of the folic acid detoxification that they're having to get out of their system. And so they'll have this postpartum depression. So taking a methylated B complex is critical in my opinion. Omega-3 fatty acids are very, very low. So we should have like a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s. We're like a 20-to-1 ratio is kind of where most people are in the population. And that's super helpful for your cell membrane being flexible so you can get things in and out of your cell. So that omega-3 would be a really important one. Obviously magnesium. I'm a huge fan of magnesium glycinate. It's a good jack of all trades. It can be taken on an empty stomach. It does very well for people. Taking it 200, 400 milligrams before bed is usually a good option. And then vitamin D can be a really good one as well. Yeah, with K2.
Because so many people are vitamin D deficient. It's very, very, very common.
It's very common because when you're deficient, it often means that you're inflamed. So your body's actually utilizing that vitamin D to help you. So you can't see it on a lab test because it's not floating around in your blood. But if you were to look at most people and if they didn't have high inflammation, they probably have sufficient levels of vitamin D. The other issue is when you take too much and it's not converting well because you're not taking K2 or you don't have enough magnesium, you start to deplete those resources. And so you can actually create more problems if you're taking, especially if you're taking like D2, which is synthetic, and your doctor's giving you 50,000 IUs once a week, and it doesn't get paired with magnesium or vitamin K2. Now all of a sudden you start calcifying your arteries or your joints and things like that, and it can cause a lot more problems. So you got to be careful with that, and you got to make sure you kind of know like what your issue is, and then pair it with the right supplements. So that would be the other one to consider.
And for women who are trying to conceive, let's say, so this is, we told everybody 20s, 30s, 40s, these are vitamins that they need to get on. We talked about 3 different ways to optimize themselves, from circadian rhythm, making sure they're obviously, careful when they use sort of depletion. When it comes to additional things that they should be doing, is there anything else that women should be start checking or be like, okay, in this decade of my life, this is what I need to be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think in your 20s, I would the mindset I would have is don't abuse your body. Like just start to appreciate it and treasure it and take care of it. Staying out late, drinking a bunch of alcohol, not taking vitamins at that point, skipping breakfast, fasting, doing all these high intense exercises, especially not respecting where you are in your cycle.
Yeah.
Just getting a decent understanding of how your body should function at a foundational level would be the 20s. The 30s would be kind of understanding that the reason that diseases kind of persist or develop is that you spend more time in a state of deficiency. And so when you start seeing like, oh, I'm 35 or I'm 36, now I'm starting to have these issues that just came out of nowhere. In my opinion, it's like, well, you've been deficient from these things for 15, 20 years, and now you're starting to see the fruit of your labor. So kind of getting an understanding of that, and then starting to counter it by actually taking those things, having good sleep hygiene, and in understanding, again, that less is probably going to be more at that point in time. And I think for a lot of us, we don't have much peace. Like we don't have much Sabbath. We don't have much rest. And if we have these bad habits from our 20s, our 30s just kind of exemplify that. They kind of just exacerbate it a little bit. So I think getting some rhythms in your life to where you have some stability and peace and calm would be really important in your 30s. And then your 40s, again, it's the extension of all these things that I just mentioned, but I think in your 40s, it would be understanding like why your body is transitioning and why that's important. And so again, for a female, it's understanding that perimenopause is actually a good thing. It's by design. It's not a problem. but then understanding that you can use things like, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy to kind of specifically target your deficiencies, but it's not a replacement necessarily. It's like
For the other things,
it's like a supplement. It's like you want to use it supplementally to kind of fill the gap a little bit.
Correct.
But I think if you just do that and not do anything else, like we said before, it's not going to do as much as it could for you, at least long term.
And if we want to educate the audience also on bioidentical hormones, right? And obviously the difference between synthetic versus non-synthetic, and then also where they should be starting with that. Obviously going to see a specialist for that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you definitely want to get with, the way that I work with my clients is that, I don't prescribe medications. And so we like to work with them before or after they've done bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. But if
do you partner with a hormone specialist, like somebody who can give them the hormones if they need?
No. Like we've found that there's just so many people out there that do that.
Okay.
Like we're usually working with them before they do it, or after they're like, hey, I've already tried this and it didn't work. Now what should I do? And so we're trying to get them to like optimize so that they can then adjust their dosage accordingly. But sorry, what was your first question?
The first question was teaching women about like hormones, like bioidentical hormones and stuff. So so I'd reverse kind of the question, being like, how do you prepare these people for that? Is it the things we already spoke about, the three kind of points, or is there additional stuff that you guys add in?
Yeah, I would start with the foundational things first, so we just said, and then depending on the person, the woman, will then look at them individually and say like, okay, this is what your apparent issues are. And then we'll walk them through a detox of parasites, heavy metals, radiation, mold, just to make sure that we kind of know that those things have been addressed. And then from there, it just depends on like if we need to do a Dutch test or whatever to kind of identify specific deficiencies. But more times than not, once you correct the cellular level, their hormones start to be corrected at the same time. So you don't really have to, I think the emphasis is rarely on getting more bioidentical hormones. It's more about reducing the dosage that they were already on or not having it at all.
And then what is your take? I wrote this down about DHEA. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you ever recommend it to your patients?
Yeah.
It's a mixed bag.
It needs to be very low dose. I think a lot of women that are getting it, they're taking like 25 milligrams. And again, it's feeding this cascade of hormonal events that is feeding it improperly. And so like, for example, if it's kind of hard to pick. I have like this picture in my head. So if you have like cholesterol, which is a building block of your hormones, and you have pregnenolone, and you kind of go progesterone, cortisol. Over here you have like DHEA, and from there it kind of goes into like testosterone and estrogens and all this different stuff. If you're giving somebody DHEA and it's not converting well, it'll likely convert to like androgens and become unfavorable in terms of testosterone. So if you just give somebody DHEA and you don't correct anything else, at least from what I've seen, it doesn't usually bode well for them.
How can you tell if DHEA is not converting properly for somebody?
I mean, you'll probably just have a worsening of your symptoms. Like you probably have worsening of like thinning of hair on your head, maybe facial hair on your face, maybe more issues with estrogen becoming, like you're not detoxing from estrogen, so you're becoming more estrogen dominant. You can have, so if you have a cycle, it could worsen your cycle a little bit.
Okay.
And again, this is like more of a longer term perspective. I think short term, it could probably be like, oh, I feel better for the first couple months. Yeah. And then after a while, you're like, now all of a sudden things are going wrong. So it has to be nuanced with the client for sure.
When it comes to the role of emotions with women's health, I thought it was yesterday I saw something on Instagram by Dr. Mary Claire, and she talked about how now we know the ovaries themselves are an entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I found that post really, really fascinating because we just thought, okay, the ovaries, are this organ that kind of functions. She's like, no, the ovaries are so hyper-linked to your nervous system that they take all the biofeedback. So if you're in a state of fight or flight, or if you're in a state of rest and digest, the ovaries fill it. And what happens when you're aging, the ovaries become more and more and more and more sensitive to that. And so it's this massive ecosystem that is playing and is regulated by your nervous system.
Right.
Which I don't think any of us have really stopped and thought about that when it comes to women's ovarian health.
Yeah, I think, and again, that should be well known in like the healthcare space, but it's not. We don't really emphasize that enough because, your hypothalamus, your pituitary gland, your adrenal glands, your thyroid, and your gonads, they all work on this axis. And so it's like when your thyroid is influenced by stress, then your adrenal glands are influenced, and then your gonads, which is your ovaries, and
right.
testes, depending on your sex, like that's all working within this ecosystem or this axis that is influencing each other. And so, when women are going through perimenopause and they're transitioning to postmenopause, they no longer make progesterone in their ovaries. They only make it in their adrenal glands now. So like you make this huge switch from your ovaries to adrenal glands. That's why stress becomes a much bigger factor when it comes to balanced health. And that's why women start to experience a lot of hot flashes, because if you get a lot of stress one day, or your blood sugar spikes, or you had poor sleep,
fatigue.
Yeah, you're going to spike that, and you're going to have a sudden epinephrine rush or adrenaline rush, and that's where you have a hot flash. And so a lot of women are getting that in the middle of the night, throughout the day, and it correlates so much back to your nervous system, 100%.
And then, so when you're working with these women in your practice and stuff, how do you support them with the emotional side of stuff if it's so important to their overall health and to their hormones and everything?
I think a lot of it gets back to just having the conversations up front about the importance of it, and understand that, like, hey, this is something that you are able to have an impact on.
Right.
Like, you have control over this as much as you can. And if they have a partner or spouse, it's like saying, hey, we need to get them involved to understand what their role in this is as well. And also, if you have kids, like, they need to know that mom's in a state of healing, or that whoever this person is, that they're in a state of healing. And just like if you break your wrist, you're not going to just put a cast on and take the cast off, on the weekends to go play basketball. Like, you're going to be on a healing journey. And this healing journey is going to require that you have some stability at home, that you have good sleep patterns, that you have good adherence to your diet, that you take your supplements, and like the family needs to know like what you're doing and why. And then they can help to support you, because if we don't bring that up though in the beginning, then they're not going to be thinking about it enough to actually do something with it.
And feel supported enough at home.
Yeah, and feel supported. And so I think there's that component to it, but also they need to have a belief that what they do makes a difference. Right. And so like if they're going into a meal and they understand that, like, if I'm eating this food in a rush state, or my nervous system's all wound up, I'm not going to be able to digest this food very well. So maybe I should be praying before a meal, to kind of like do some deep breaths and kind of make sure I'm correcting my nervous system,
Regulate
so I can regulate a little bit. Or like what you can do before bed if you're all wound up and you're having racing thoughts, like, you can take magnesium threonate, you can do box breathing, you can do these different things to kind of control this, and just giving them the tools and the belief that if they do it, it'll actually work, I think helps quite a bit.
And I also want to jump, since we're speaking about women's health and hormones, for young women who are on birth control, what is your advice for that?
Don't do it. Yeah, just don't do it. I mean, I think controlling cycle with birth control, or helping to control symptoms, it's just it's the epitome of what our conventional medical system is. And it's just honestly kind of disgraceful, especially for young women that are missing out on the peak phase of their cycle, like that, the best time that they could experience is like being eliminated. And the reality is, a lot of these issues are metabolic issues.
Right.
Like they're issues that need to be controlled through what they consume, how they regulate their circadian rhythm, and not
insulin resistance.
Yeah, insulin resistance, and not just taking a pill that would, deplete B12, B6, folate, zinc, and create a whole host of other issues with autoimmunity, estrogen dominance, PCOS, like the list goes on and on.
So this one happened to me when I was younger. I got diagnosed with, I was getting a lot of ovarian cysts. I didn't have PCOS, so I would just get really large cysts. And they put me on birth control when I was really young. So then I went through years on birth control, obviously became really deficient in all my minerals and stuff. Those leached out of me. And then as I got older, as I entered my 30s, I'm 42 now, I started having like things, I would get migraines. I wasn't feeling well.
Yeah.
I feel really drained. I was starting to look really gaunt. And it wasn't until I found a functional medicine doctor who said, you have estrogen dominance. You have candida. You need to completely get off birth control. You shouldn't even be touching it. You're completely depleted. And until I started working on that foundational health, I didn't feel well my entire life. So 30 years of my life was spent kind of not feeling well. And it wasn't until like kind of my mid 30s when I started taking this different route and started supplementing and taking care of myself that the building blocks started back up.
Wow.
And so like you said, in your 20s and 30s, if you're spending your time being so depleted, then in your 40s, everything just hits you like, you know,
and I guess I'm just getting older.
Yeah, and it just kind of hits you because your body's been running on fumes for so long, it cannot sustain itself anymore. And so that's when I was like, oh, I'm vitamin D deficient or this, that, and the other, and I need to supplement. It's because I spent so many years on this birth control that took away basic minerals that my body needed. And they were trying to treat my ovarian cysts with birth control, which, by the way, didn't always work anyways. And all it did was disrupt my cycle when nobody bothered treating my estrogen dominance, which was causing the ovarian cysts to begin with.
Yeah, and that's a story for most women, and I think it's very unfortunate. And I don't know what else to do except for what we're doing right now and to talk about it and to kind of bring more awareness to it, because conventional doctors just don't have the bandwidth or the resources really properly fix it. And following the algorithm that they've been trained in, that's the next best step is birth control. And then it's a partial hysterectomy. And then, and here's some more pills after that. And so it's
a cycle.
It's a huge cycle. And
it feeds the medical system.
Yeah. It's hard because doctors aren't, like, they want to help people most of the times. It's just they've been trained to think that if I don't know it, then nobody else knows this.
Correct.
And so that creates this hierarchical issue to where the information that's being passed down to them is what they're studying and being trained in and becoming an expert in, when we're ignoring this whole other section of health that needs to be implemented and tied back in. So I don't know. It might take a few generations to see this truly change, but I'm hopeful.
Research, I think women's health, for the longest time we were told, oh, women are just small men, and we're not at all small men. We're completely different.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of like putting women to the side and being like, we're not going to study your health. We're definitely not going to study your hormones. We're definitely not going to look at your ovaries, and we don't care about what's going on over there, has been such a disservice. And I feel that, quote unquote, like feminists, if you're pushing for anything, you should be pushing for more research on women's health so women can go back into being true to their form and design.
Yeah, as you said before, most studies are not looking at women, they're looking at men.
Yeah.
And they're not looking at pregnant women, and they're not looking at different stages of where women are in
Correct.
their cycle and not controlling for those variables. And so, you have a very lopsided, perspective on this stuff. And it's just, they're not little men by any means.
No.
Yeah.
I wanted to quickly talk about, Austin, your personal journey from traditional kind of medicine into, kind of this whole like space.
Yeah.
Your brother had gotten sick. And so how did that impact you? I know your brother was diagnosed with leukemia.
Yeah, he had leukemia when he was 14, I was 12. That really motivated me to want to get in the health space. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it, but it was kind of shocking as a 12-year-old to kind of be in the hospital and see him lose his hair and like get injections all the time, and just he survived and he got through it, and he's doing well now. But he had 2 like knee surgeries, and he's had some issues after that because like the chemo and radiation just destroyed his bones. And he's had 3 kids, and he's actually survived really well. But it had a huge ripple effect on my parents, my mom, my dad, just all the issues they had to go through, and then they started getting their own health problems. And there was definitely some issues in terms of our lifestyle factors and high stress and just trying to survive. And so I really got this exposure to all these things and what the consequences of it are. And it made me just motivated to want to help people not have to go through that. And so that's kind of why I am who I am now.
Speak about what you do and practice what you do.
Yeah, and I had my own issues. I had chronic pain, chronic fatigue for like 10 years when I was like 16 to like 27.
At your peak of your health as a man.
Yeah. Like I was taking ibuprofen all the time because I got a back injury from football, and then I had like more back pain that the chiropractor couldn't fix, and I was just like, well, what's going on here? And it turns out I had a stomach ulcer that was happening from the ibuprofen and H. pylori and all these different issues. And then, just like tons of antibiotics and just all the typical stuff. And so gut was destroyed. And then thankfully I met my wife, and she showed me what cooking real food looked like, and how to provide, and and she, like, that whole energy exchange that you're talking about was like exactly what happened. Like, she exchanged that with me and just showed me like what that was like on a practical basis. And it was a whole combination of things. Like, I met this other provider who cured himself from cancer. He had like this big tumor he fixed naturally, and he showed me these bunch of people that were very insightful to my
practice.
My practice and my mind. Because I mean, this is important. Like, I'm not a physician, so like I don't prescribe medications. Like, I've never done that, and so it's really always forced me to want to fix things from a
holistic
perspective. And honestly, I didn't want to go down the conventional medical route. Like, my business partner and colleague, he's an MD, and like he's kind of regretful that he actually did that, because he spent years trying to untrain himself from the things that he learned.
The programming that you get in medical school.
A lot of indoctrination can happen. So I think the good news is that you can work with somebody that's been trained a certain way, and they can still come out of it and still see things from a very complete perspective. But like, there's a lot of indoctrination that happens to all of us.
And when it comes to even social media, I know you've talked about being in social media jail because you've tried to educate and talk about things that you've learned or experiences you've had. How did you kind of overcome that with the algorithm? Because the algorithm is very unforgiving to that.
Yeah, I don't know, honestly. I think I just stayed persistent with it, and didn't give up. And I just, through a lot of prayer, back in the day, I prayed that God would open the floodgates and bring people to me that wanted help. And that night I had a viral post go crazy, and it was like kind of the beginning of it all. But I've had ups and downs. I got banned on TikTok. Still haven't got that back. And I've had to be careful with a lot of things, and I kind of share as much of the truth as I feel like I can
without getting
too far. And then like people that are in my community or my clients, I kind of go as much as I need to. But yeah, I've just had to be kind of tactful with it.
Yeah. Wait, TikTok is very unforgiving, even more than I would say Instagram, because it can be something that is, it's a piece of advice you want to give online, but it says, no, like this is not with the terms of our community and stuff, and they can completely like shut down your account or flag you, and then the flag stays forever, or they like lock out your account because it's not according to community guidelines.
Yeah.
But it's in somebody's practice, advice that they want to share.
The worst part is I've had people come after my license. I've had like just to be honest, like they've been very liberal people that have kind of filed complaints against me, and they're not even clients. Like they're just people.
Well, that's why I don't understand how somebody can go out of their way to be so cruel.
Yeah, and so that's created a hassle for me, and to me, it's just part of the job. It's worth it to me because I know that I've been able to help a lot of people from it, so it's part of the job. But it's just been kind of amazing the amount of resistance, and I don't want to call it persecution, but in a way, it's kind of persecution that you face if you're trying to share truth. And I don't get everything right. I'll be the first one to tell you, like I've gotten a lot of things wrong, but I still feel like the movement that I've been a part of, like the Maha movement, and I'm not like an official member of the Maha movement.
We are very supportive of it. That's what we all believe in, right? That's why we're here.
Yeah, we want to make America healthy again. Like that's a good movement, and so I think we've all had persecution in different ways, and to me, it doesn't make sense why we should do that if we're just trying to help people. So
I think it's the heavy indoctrination, it's the deep-seated programming. It's also fear that people need to like look at their own decisions for their family and their health and be like, maybe what was their role to play? And I think people are too scared to go inwards, and they're like, oh my God, like what these people are talking about, maybe I had a hand in that, and maybe that person in my family might have got cancer, or maybe my child has certain conditions, and maybe I overlook certain things. So they're angry. They're angry at themselves, and they project it onto other people, which is, I think, it's a lack of self-awareness, right?
Well, it takes humility to do that. Like a lot of us are very proud, and when you're proud, like you don't want to make changes. You don't want to admit that you're wrong. And again, like just like I've had to admit when I'm wrong. And I think that's, again, as a Christian, I feel like if I can't be humble and I can't like grow and learn, then like why be a Christian? Why have that? Because that's really the backbone of for me, that's my backbone. But for people who don't have faith, like they're gonna make their God their political party or their conventional medicine. Like they'll make that their religion. And so like it's gonna be very hard to like go against your religion when you're being told that it's wrong. And so for me, health is not my religion. Like it's not my idol. So I just want to be humble with it, and it's easier to accept, your mistakes at that point.
I wanted to leave a piece of advice from you to our community, for them listening to this podcast. Like, what is one we've had such incredible takeaways, but what is one piece of advice you'd like to leave them with?
I mean, for me, the most important thing is just, again, it's my faith. Like that to me, at the end of the day, if I have perfect health or terrible health, like if I still have Christ and I still have my faith, and like I have a joy that's
right.
That comes from a place that's sustainable beyond anything else. And so if you don't have that, then that would be my recommendation, is to find that, because that will give you a superpower of healing and self-control and discipline that nothing else can give you. No like self-help, Tony Robbins, like that, all those things are great. But for me, it comes from a place of where's my foundation, what is my belief, and how does that change how I operate in the world?
So I think, my name in Arabic means faith. So Iman actually literally means faith. So I went to this seminar this guy was giving, and he explained what faith truly is. And he said, real faith, having faith in Creator in life, it's something beyond yourself, is the following. He said, imagine you have a bill to pay, but you have X amount in your bank account, and you have a bill coming in that you have to pay. That is not having faith. Imagine that you have a bill to pay, and you have money coming in. It's not quite in your account yet, but it's coming in. So okay, that's not faith either. Blind faith in Creator is knowing that you have a bill to pay and you might have nothing in your bank account, but their Creator is going to take care of it.
Yeah.
That is the unwavering faith that you need to have operating through life, that something higher than yourself, bigger than yourself, is going to take care of it. That is true faith, when you have no way of understanding where it's going to come from, but it's going to get resolved.
Yeah, that's the piece that surpasses understanding. And I think our culture has very little peace. If anything, we have no peace.
We also don't have much faith.
We have no faith. We have chaos. And I think there are a lot of good people out there, though, that do have faith, that do operate in that mindset. And they don't get enough attention. We only focus on the negative things. But I think, that's perfectly said.
Yeah. I think whether you're like us and you're from one of the Abrahamic religions or like really just believe in source and God and creator, I think it's really important to believe in something beyond yourself. I think spirituality is the core foundation of living well. Yeah. That for me is extremely important.
Yeah, I think that's what holistic health is supposed to be, right? And we've subtracted a huge element of health when we do that from people, because you can't study that very well. You can't study the conscious mind, and we like to act like we know what's going on. Yeah, we like to act like we know what's going on, but most of the times. We have very little knowledge of the world in front of us, let alone the world that happened before us. And I think we just have a lot of ignorance and a lot of pride, again.
And a lot of arrogance.
Yeah, a lot of arrogance for sure.
Thank you, Dr. Austin Lakes,
Thank
for
you so
flying
much.
down
Appreciate
and
it.
being on the show. And I know my audience is going to absolutely love this episode. So
Appreciate
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning into Biohack-it. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a short review. It really helps us reach more listeners just like you. Follow us on Instagram at biohack-it for exclusive content and the latest updates. Remember, your health is in your hand and curiosity heals.